Hello. Excuse me. Hello.
You two seem pretty solid to me. Change is good, I guess. Not to me. Leslie's going around asking everybody if they're better off than they were a year ago. All I care about is that I'm the same. If I'm the same as I was a year ago, I'm happy.
Wait, I forgot. Who the hell is pregnant?
What?
I found a pregnancy test at your cabin, and I checked with all the girls over there. It wasn't any of them.
Hello, darling. What is that?
Talk, maybe in private.
Daniel, let's do a sound check.
Yep. Hello. How's that?
Awesome.
Great. And I will, let's see, I can share my presentation. I was just adding a little 100% proven on the top left.
Love it.
So you should be able to see the PowerPoint now.
Yep.
Good. So it's a quick PowerPoint, but some just to talk through. How you doing, Bob?
Doing well. Doing well.
Happy Tuesday.
Yes. Yes. There was a part of me that didn't know if Monday was going to end or not, but
Yeah. I understand.
here we are.
How was Easter?
It was really nice. Really nice. Fairly quiet. Just kind of the traditional, church and eating too much.
That always works. We did the traditionally non-traditional Passovers. So we were at the synagogue on Saturday, sort of helping to run the event. It was about 80 people, and we write our own. So for the Passover dinner, you have a written guide that you follow. We've written our own, and it's very traditional in that it includes every component piece, but it's very non-traditional in the way we include every component piece. So it was fun. We had a good time.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Got people up and dancing. It was a good couple of hours. So good meal as well, which is always important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I had a good conversation with Bill and with Melena and Earl and Sharon. It sounds like our FAFSA session's off to a good start.
Great,
Yeah.
great. So Earl's back in or back
Earl is
on?
back. Yep, Earl is back on.
Okay,
He was able to convince his new employer that this was something they should support. So
good. I like him a lot. I think he's really dedicated and very passionate about his work.
agreed. So was Bill going to be able to join us today?
I assume so. He normally is on. I'm going to text him here. He just sent me a couple of emails, so I know he's.
Okay, just want to make sure we're on the right page. I know we've had some issues with dial-in. How are the plans going for the FCAN conference?
You know, we have a limited role on that one.
Yep.
With, we're doing the Innovative Scholarship Work Group. It's a pre-meeting.
Yep.
So, but looks like it's going well. I know our part is going well. We're going to be totally prepared for that. So.
Looks like a couple of people have dialed in. Hello, Joan. And I've got someone who's called in on a phone line as well.
Yep. So for those who are waiting, we are a couple minutes from getting started. So we're having some informal dialogue here. Bob McFalls and then Daniel.
Feel free to let us know. I guess if you're not hearing us, you're not going to be able to let us know that you're not hearing us. But if you are hearing us, feel free to say hello.
Hello, this is Joan from the Manatee Community Foundation.
Hi, Joan.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Is it a good day where everyone is?
It's a gorgeous day. It's Central Florida. It's always a beautiful day in Central Florida. Even though when it isn't a beautiful day, it's still a beautiful day in Central Florida.
That's right.
Yeah. Looks like a few more folks are on. Just wait another minute or so. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say thanks for joining us. We'll be getting started here momentarily. We'll definitely wait until we're straight up 2 o'clock, and I'm trying to get one more person on for sure.
It's one of those ones with video, so I turn the video and the sound off.
Y'all gonna like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Laura,
Yes.
We can hear you, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. It's okay. I just didn't want you to say, boy, that was a really terrible presentation while it's live.
I know. I hit mute, and because I was moving my laptop from a conference room back to my desk so we could watch on a bigger screen. So my apologies.
No, you're fine. And actually, it's very much meant to be a Q&A. So you're welcome to mute it. You're welcome to leave it on, whatever works for you.
Okay, thank you.
I just, I know how it can be on the other end of that line, so I just want to make sure you know. So
Much appreciated. Thank you.
No worries at all. No worries at all. So, Bob, do you want to wait another minute or so, or do you want to go ahead and get started?
I was waiting for Bill to come in. Looks like he is coming on right now. So.
Okay, good.
Yeah, sorry about that. I got a link off of the registration page. I guess I just pulled the one that Cynthia shared with Daniel.
No problem. Hey, Bill. So I think we're ready to begin. I can turn on the recording if you want me to do that.
Actually, it's recording already.
Oh, it is. Okay, good. Great. So anything you want to say, Bill, as an intro before I jump in?
We have a few new folks. Did everybody have a chance to introduce themselves?
We haven't really done that. We did that sort of informally, but sure, we could do that.
Why don't we do that just so Daniel has an opportunity to learn who all is on?
So Bill, we'll start with you.
Sorry, Bob.
Yeah, why don't we start with you?
Okay. For those of you who I don't know, I'm not sure all we have online, so there may be someone there. I'm Bill Hoffman. I'm the education consultant for FPN. And we'll move on to Joan.
Hi, Joan, you're on mute, so just FYI, if we can't hear you. I know she was there before. She said hello, so.
Yep. Joan's with the Manatee Community Foundation. She might still be on mute, but we'll move forward. If she comes back on live, we'll be happy to hear her pleasant voice.
And Good. Who else?
Yeah, Laura's on, and I know now, Laura, you are on mute, so I don't know if you want to unmute yourself just to say hello.
Yes, sorry. Hi, this is Laura. I'm joined by Nan O'Kelly and Lucia Fontella, also at the Community Foundation North Florida in Tallahassee.
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And we've got someone dialed in from a 941 area code. I don't know who that is. Well, I'll say hello. This is Daniel Barkowitz, and I am Assistant Vice President for Financial Aid and Veterans Affairs at Valencia College. And I've been at Valencia a little, well, actually close to 2 years. June will be my 2-year anniversary at the Valencia. But I've been in the financial aid profession for about 30 years, most of my career in the New England area. So I'm relatively new to Florida, came down about almost 4 years ago. Love Florida, very happy with the move. And got connected with FPN through FCAN, which is an organization that I really am a big supporter of, and happy to have a chance to talk with you all.
And Daniel, we're really happy to have you on. This is Bob McFalls, President and CEO of FPN. Welcome, everyone. And Bill, I think we're good to go.
I think we are. And just for those who have not participated in this format before, we have 30 minutes scheduled. Daniel's been good enough to prepare a presentation for the first roughly half of it. After that, he'll open it up to questions on what he's presented on or anything. So Daniel, please start away.
Great. So we titled this session Proven Practices for Scholarship Providers. And it's sort of a catch-all session really to address a couple of issues and to give you some good reference points. And I will share the presentation with Bill and Bob to share with you. Nothing in this is anything that you need to worry about, but if you want to take notes, you're welcome to. If not, you'll get a copy of the PowerPoint as well. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about the institutions of higher education. If you have questions, who should you contact? Who should you be in touch with at an institution of higher ed? What questions do you ask of a financial aid officer? What are the things that that you're that you should be looking for or looking at as you're working with a family or a student in terms of their scholarship? What are the questions that you should know to ask? I'm going to talk a little bit about FERPA and your right to know, and what information can colleges share with you, what information can colleges not share with you. And then we'll give you some advice for best interactions with students and families and where you can go to get more information. So that's a lot to do in 15 minutes, but that's our agenda. So we'll hop to it. So the first question is, who do you talk to at an institution? So basically, I tried to divide this between sort of small office, medium-sized office, larger office, keeping in mind that there's the financial aid office who handles the awarding side and basically has the responsibility for scholarship management in one form or another. So that may include their own scholarships that they're administering. It would include working with you as an outside provider to arrange for certification if you require that, or accounting for the scholarship within the financial aid budget. We talked about that before. At a smaller office, it may be the director. I mean, I remember in my career, I worked at a school that had 700 students, and we had a 2-person financial aid office. It was me and my assistant director, and basically, if there were questions or concerns, they came to me. So as a director of financial aid, I often was involved in those kinds of student-related conversations. In a medium-sized office, it may be an assistant director who's the person who has ownership of or responsibility for scholarship management. At a larger office, it's probably someone with a title like financial aid officer or financial aid specialist or financial aid coordinator, someone who's got more of the day-to-day responsibilities for the scholarship administration. I mean, you're always welcome to talk to the director, but they're probably going to refer you back to the person who has the more day-to-day responsibility. Keep in mind, that's on the awarding side. The billing office is where the payment happens. And this can be a little confusing because obviously colleges refer to this in lots of different ways. You've probably seen this in your interactions. Sometimes it's the bursar, sometimes it's called student accounts, sometimes it's called the billing office. Different colleges call it different things, but ultimately it's the same function. It's the function of who has responsibility for billing and payment. Interesting, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but there's a federal rule that the same person cannot have responsibility for awarding financial aid and dispersing financial aid. That's a federal requirement. It's called the separation of duties requirement. So colleges at a minimum, even a very small office or small college, have to have separate functions regarding, with separate people around those issues. So again, in a smaller office, you might reach out to the bursar, you might reach out to the director of student accounts. At a larger office, it's probably someone like a billing representative who has that primary responsibility. So that's who to contact. What questions do you ask? So, the first question is to talk about where the student sits in the financial aid life cycle. And we've talked a little bit about this, but just to remind you, there are really 4 stages of the financial aid life cycle as we sit within the financial aid office. And that is the application process. So that's completing the FAFSA, getting the initial information in. There's the verification process. That is, again, confirming the information on the application. There's the disbursement process. That's actually getting the funds delivered to the student account. And there's the reconciliation side. That's making sure that our funds all tie out and that the dollars and cents match. So one question might be to know where the student is in the life cycle, because that will have impact on what's happening with that student record at that time. And keep in mind, the life cycle is determined by the student, not necessarily by the office. So, for example, I may meet with someone, at 10 a.m. who's just beginning his application, and then my 11 o'clock appointment may be someone who's in disbursement status. So it's varied based on where the student is in their own life cycle through the process, and that can have some impact. So, for example, the receipt of an outside scholarship in the application cycles a little easier to deal with because I haven't made the award yet. If I'm in the disbursement process and all of a sudden I get a receipt of an outside scholarship, it's going to be a little harder to deal with because we've already made determinations in the financial aid office about how to award and what to award. Excuse me. For those of you that weren't with us back in the fall, I know we did a session on resolving overpayments and professional judgment. Just as a reminder, from a federal financial aid perspective, if a student doesn't have need available, then we do have to go through an adjustment called over award to figure out what financial aid can we reduce to make room for the outside funding. So one thing you do want to ask of your financial aid officers and or the colleges you work with is, what is their reduction policy? What do they reduce first? Is that loan? Is that work study? Where does scholarship get reduced? Because obviously you don't want scholarship displacement, which I know is a term that you use. We call it over-awarding, but you don't want scholarship displacement to occur where your fund, the fund you're providing, winds up solely reducing the amount of funds the student gets from some other source. So that's, again, an issue in an area probably of concern. There are lots of ways that colleges can do what's called professional judgment. And I know, Bill, we had talked about potentially doing a session on this at FCAN, talking about the different ways in which it was also one of our earlier sessions that we didn't actually have enough folks to go through, but it would be helpful potentially for you to understand the reasons why a college might make a professional judgment. So we've talked about other ways to get you that information. I don't know if you want to add anything, Bill, to that plan.
No, other than we will have some time, and Daniel's been good enough to present to our Innovative Scholarship Work Group meeting, which occurs the morning before FCAN formally starts, on professional judgment.
Great. So if you're there, you'll have a chance. We can talk about ways in which, especially when a parent's lost a job, or in a case of a student going back to school, an adult student going back to school, what are the ways in which the financial aid office can use their professional judgment to create need for that family? We'll talk about that. And then the question of unmet need. Is there money available within or room within the student's budget to address unmet need? Those are questions, again, as an advocate for the student, that you can ask of the financial aid office, and what's the plan? So FERPA and your right to know. Remember, FERPA is the Federal Educational Right to Privacy Act. It's a right that goes through educational records from the K through college experience, and there are multiple levels of protection. FERPA protects student records, but the real question is, what constitutes a student? So technically, according to FERPA, an applicant is not a student. They're not a student until they begin enrollment at our institution. There may be other records that protect, or other rights that protect privacy for students who are in the application cycle, but there's more information I can share about applicants than I can share about enrolled students, because there's different levels of protection. FERPA does not protect directory information, which is public. So, as an outside provider, you can always find out if students enrolled. That's public information. And there may be information available in a public disclosure, which we wouldn't make necessarily from, without your request, or it may be on the college's website. You may be able to access a student directory. Students can always opt out, but there is directory information that's available. And FERPA doesn't limit, in other words, it would allow for a student to authorize a third party to receive their records. So often what will happen is a scholarship provider will let us know with the student's signature that they're authorized to receive information. Up until recently, FERPA did not cover FAFSA records. So the good news is that under the laws that were passed fairly recently, FAFSA information can be shared with scholarship providers, again, with student permission. So the student has to authorize us to share FAFSA information with you, but that information can be shared with you, including income information, EFC, other pieces of information with written permission from the student, him or herself. So that's another piece just to keep in mind. So this is really just a list of links and other things that you might want to know, given that I wanted to give you a list of ideas and places to go for more information. And I'll go through these fairly quickly with you, but the first is my blog. I'm now maintaining a financial aid blog, which I would suggest you're free to take a look at. It doesn't have my name or Valencia on it anyway. It's not a publicly identified blog to me. It's really I go by the name Moneyman on the blog, but you're free to use that blog, refer it to your students. We're going through the application process and how do we determine your financial aid. It's meant to be a public information blog, so feel free The link is moneyman.home.blog. You can share that with your staff. You can share that with your students. It is a publicly available blog. The second is finaid.org. This is a really great all-around webpage. If you want to learn more about how financial aid works, it's a great place to be in. It was written by a guy by the name of Mark Kantrowitz. It's pretty static, the pages, but it's got good information. The third one here is IFAP. IFAP stands for Information for Financial Aid Professionals. This is the federal government site where they distribute information to those of us working in the financial aid offices around the country. And you're welcome to take a look at it. All that information is public as well. It's pretty technical, so if you want to learn much more about the technical side of financial aid, it is there. But that's available for you too. I do recommend that you get to know the financial aid officer you work with, or officers you work with. So there are a couple ways to do that. First of all, sometimes for a student's perspective, some colleges divide their assignments by alpha split. So, if your last name is from A to F, you'll see this counselor, G to L, this counselor. Those colleges generally list that on their webpage, so good for you and for the student to know who that assigned counselor or representative is. Some campuses or some colleges split by campus. So if you attend the Osceola campus for Valencia, you have a dedicated set of financial aid representatives there. So again, good to know who those folks are. As I said before, also good for you and the student to know who manages the outside scholarship programs. My college, it's Susan Ambridge, who's our scholarship manager, but she's a great resource as well. Keep in mind, FAFSA is our professional association. You're welcome to join. The membership's relatively inexpensive. It's an individual membership, and they do free training and webinars all year. And we have our annual conference coming up. I'm really excited that some folks from FPN are going to participate actually in a session at the FAFSA conference, where we'll do a historic convening of scholarship providers and financial aid officers to talk about shared issues of common interest. So I'm really excited about that opportunity, and I want to thank Bill and Bob for their support in that area. Every year as well, the Federal Student Aid has an annual conference. It's a free conference. It takes place either East Coast or West Coast. It's a full week-long review of everything you ever wanted to know about federal financial aid. And you're welcome to attend if you want to. This coming year always is right around the week after Thanksgiving, or the first week of December. This year it's going to be in Reno, Nevada. Last year it was in Atlanta. And you can also go online to the website and watch the presentations. They record them, so you can hear more about whatever issue it might be. And last is, if you're really serious about learning more about financial aid, there is an FSA training webpage, which actually is what's called FSA Coach. It's the basic training for people around financial aid. It's the starting training for those of us working in the financial aid field. So that's free and that's available as well if you're interested. So this is my contact information, and I took my 15 minutes, so wanted to make sure I stuck with the rules that we had set out. We wanted to open this up now for your questions, your comments, anything you want to know about the topics we've covered. And I'll turn it over now to you.
Daniel, I've got a question. Could you go back to this, if it's the second or third slide where it was who you call? Yeah. So if you have a foundation, and this is at least true of the education foundations, they will probably work with 20 or so higher ed institutions. Right. From public universities to state colleges to private, out of state, state. So what, on the first one, I guess I was trying to get to what question could they ask to get directed to the right person?
So right, I mean, the first question is, who is it that manages your, and I would use the term outside scholarship programs. So that's a common, I know you don't refer to it that way within your space, but for us, because for the perspective of the college, we have internal scholarships, we have our own foundation scholarships, and then we have what we call either private or outside scholarships. So the question really is, who handles the administration of your private or outside scholarships?
Good.
That will get you to the right person. Now, it may be distributed. So in some institutions, here it's Susan that manages that, Susan Ambridge, as I said before. But it may be at some institutions it depends on the individual student. So sometimes it's very caseload dependent. So that's when the next question would be, who manages caseloads for, this particular student? Who's the financial aid officer assigned, perhaps? I mean, that could be another way to find out. Great question. What other questions can we answer? What issues are you facing as you start to work with providers and partners in the financial aid office? What are the things that are your pain points, and how can we help? How can we help with those?
Well, Daniel, I don't want to monopolize, but I got another question.
Well, of course.
Often, as we've had conversations in the past, donors will restrict and say, I'm going to make this up, a little more restrictive, but this can only be used for tuition. And from previous presentations you've done, I know that that's not a differentiation that most financial aid offices make. They want to make sure they're fulfilling the student's full need.
Correct.
If you're a scholarship provider, how do you handle that with financial aid office?
Well, so good question. So usually the designation's made with the paperwork that comes into us, but I would echo one of the things you said. It's not to the student's advantage necessarily to say it's tuition only, keeping in mind that there may be other expenses that form the cost of attendance, and not to redo the presentation we did before. But the cost of attendance includes things like books, transportation, housing, meals, all of those personal expenses that are educationally related. So the difficulty becomes, so there are two conditions. One is if it's actually tuition limited, and the student happens to be a veteran and is using their VA benefits, that it's a direct dollar for dollar reduction in what I can certify them for in VA benefits. The VA says if it's a tuition designated scholarship, then I need to subtract that dollar for dollar from what the VA will pay. So in a sense, you're hurting the VA student when that situation occurs. So just keep that in mind, A. B, there's, often people will confuse programs like Bright Futures or like Florida Prepaid and tell me those only pay tuition. Well, that's not true. They're based on the tuition amount. There's nothing wrong with basing your amount of a scholarship on tuition, but simply making the payment to the educational record of the student and letting the fee go where it goes. So, another way of saying that is your scholarship is based on the tuition amount, but it can be used to pay any educationally related expense. Does that help, Bill?
It does. Thanks. I had to find the mute button.
Yeah, no worries. Other questions or comments? I think we are down to Laura. Laura, is there anything that I'm going to call you out because you're the only one on the participant list that I see at this point? Anything you want?
Thank you. No, we were just talking. I think this is more in depth than our scholarship award process entails because we have so few scholarship funds, and the few awards that we do issue generally are to the school, and we let them pick out where it's best to allocate those dollars. So we have not encountered too many circumstances where much of this really applies to our work.
That's fair.
It's really helpful for us to know what's going on behind the scenes. So thank you.
Of course, and I'm always happy. My just so you know, my 2 years before I was here in Central Florida, I was in Northern Florida. So I have a good passion. Actually, spent some years as some summers as a child in Tallahassee as well. So I know your space very well.
So you know just how hot and humid it is here.
Absolutely.
No breeze off the ocean up here. Off the Gulf.
It's why God invented air conditioning. That's right.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, unless there are any other questions, I think we have come to about the end of our time. So I'll remind you again, my contact information is here. I'm always happy to answer any question that people have. You can also feel free to follow the blog if you'd like. And I'd love your feedback on that if you're willing, because I'm trying to make this as useful for parents and students as possible.
Thanks, Daniel. And thanks for sharing your PowerPoint. We'll include that with the recording in our resources page.
Great. Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hope to see you at FCAN.
I will see you there. Take care.
Bye-bye.